Guys, this is nitrous install video part 2. Hit a little bit of a snag. We're about 5 days out from the race at the drag strip with hopefully racing maybe supercharged Eray, maybe a couple other cars, some Lambos and stuff. They're supposed to be there. So I'd had plans for Peitz to have a Peitz Performance tunes to have a full system that I could pull timing and everything with using an LNC controller. Had it ordered out for a few months. Unfortunately, there's a firmware issue. I did get the stuff in time, but they do not have the firmware in order to be able to run this because it's set up for the twin turbo setups. So basically, I've got no way of pulling timing. So right now, I'm kind of in a crunch, and so I'm trying to put in a transmission pressure control module in order to just spray, 100 shot, maybe a 150, get some logs and see how well the computer does about pulling timing on its own. So that's kind of where we're on this clutch pressure controller. Just because anybody that's going to do this, there's a few little nuances that I've seen so far. So basically, this is what the clutch pressure controller is. And this is the one from Peitz. There's also one from Sissio I've seen. Peitz is a programmable one. You have to hook to a laptop and actually program. Sissio is from what I've seen in their instructions. It looks like you basically set it to a certain percentage and it just kind of does it on its own. You don't really program it. So this is the controller that it comes with to hook to your laptop to actually program it. This is the actual module. From here, you got it's kind of plug and play for the most part. This piece down here is going to plug into my valves. Right here is extensions, and that's going to get power from my valves. And then this piece, this white wire is going to go into the car and actually going to come off the pedal and get a throttle signal, which is different from the Sissio kit. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So basically what I'm doing now is you have to depin your transmission connector in order to bypass that signal that the transmission's getting on the clutch. And so that's where we're at right now. So I had to pull the bottom pieces off, just like I've shown in other videos. And then I've had to depin this connector. All right, and so depinning sounds really hard. I'd never done that before until today, okay? So, I mean, other than like on record connector, I've never done a factory like connector like this. But just to give you an idea of kind of how that works, there's a locking tab here that pops up and that unlocks the connectors. And then on each one of them, right below where the metal piece is, you slide in. You're supposed to have a depinning tool. I was able to get this to work, so I didn't actually have one. It's just a very thin, this point wire. And once you push that in there, it just pushes up on the metal tab, and then you just kind of wiggle and they pop out. It was actually a lot easier than I was expecting it to be to do this. And so now I've got the wires that it requires to be depinned. And this is basically, I think, number 3 and number 12. And they're all numbered. So there's numbers on the front and the back of the connector to tell you which one is which pin. And they're all obviously individually colored wires with different combos. So I've got those out per the instructions. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to repin this into that, and and that's kind of where we're going to be at. And I'll show that here in just a little bit. But all right, well, just to kind of see what the original plan was here, this is the setup that I received from Peitz. And it's got the LNC and everything kind of pre-wired. This all replaces your coil pack plugs, and this will take the signal that's going to your plugs and it replaces that with retarded timing. And then he uses, these are solid state solenoids. Really trick setup. It's just unfortunate there's no firmware, so it's, basically a brick right now. Can't do anything with it. And then the LNC is going to get a signal from the boost controller, and the boost controller is going to tell it how much timing to retard. And it's not going to use boost, or it's got another mechanism, which I'm unsure of quite as of right now. So this is what it looks like. Like I said, it's pretty trick setup. And this is actually mounts in the tunnel. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use this, so I'm going to have to be kind of redneck backwoods. I'm going to be spraying it and praying. And this is an old school spray and pray, see how it does. But I've done 100 shots on lots of different engines, way less cast pistons, way less stuff than this thing has, and a way worse computer. So I think we're probably going to be okay, at least on a 100 shot, pretty confident with good fuel. The 150 is where it gets a little dicey. I think probably on a 150, probably still going to be okay. Because the fueling is going to be fine. It's just going to be, the timing going to be too much. And I think these are pretty good about detecting knock. So the plan's gonna be basically do the 100, see if it looks clean. If it looks clean, then maybe step it up. And if I can, maybe try to get a set of 125 jets. That might be a good compromise. So I'll have something, because at a 100 shot, this thing has got nothing for a supercharged E-Ray. I think at a 150, I think, you know, it could maybe be competitive, but that thing's gonna be fast. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. I'll try to video as much as I can. I'm in a real big time crunch, so this may be a little bit limited. So, all right, stay tuned. Just a quick thing on this, just repin this. So basically there's a tab here, this pulls up, and then you take the factory pins, you just push them in all the way up till they're flush, and you push that tab down and it locks those on. And so then you're gonna take these and it's gonna bypass, and these are gonna go into your connector and they're labeled. So you got 2 labels here, one for 12 and then one for 3. And so you're gonna plug those in the back here, and I can't do that while holding the phone, unfortunately. And then once you've got those pop back in, then you're gonna push this locking mechanism back to lock all the pins back. And then that should be the repinning part. And then that's gonna be what connects it actually to the clutch pressure controller. So let's go ahead and do that real quick and I'll show you. Now guys, I'd be lying if I didn't say this isn't stressful as fuck. Just because you're basically taking your OEM connector, which could break your car, and you're depinning and repinning. So it's stressful. I'm not trying to make it overcomplicate it, but from a like amateur perspective, this stuff is it's easy. Now after doing it, it is easy, but it is very stressful. So just keep that up in mind when doing this. It's kind of expected. All right, so another snag, the power connector is different than the OEM. So OEM has a lock tab here in the centerpiece, and then the one I have has a lock tab there, which is in a different location, so it won't slide on and lock. So unfortunately, so what I reached out to Peitz, he said basically to shave the interior tab off of this one, and then shave the tab right here off of that. And I'm gonna do that with just here in a Dremel and try to cut that off and then allow that connector to work. It's either that or try to repin it. All right, so that's where we're at now. Okay, so here's what I use my Dremel, this tiny little tool. You can fit it up in the connector, and you shave off that tab, and that allows you to slide that on. I did it for both of them. And I guess the GM must change the connectors pretty often, according to Peitz. All right, guys, part 2, nitrous install. So this is day 2. So yesterday I spent the whole day installing the clutch pressure controller. Unfortunately, after depinning everything, starting the car, I got a bunch of codes. Transmission wouldn't move. Maybe a connection issue, not sure. Checked the pins, they looked like they were okay. Reached out to Alex, we did some quick troubleshooting. He was very responsive, but unfortunately I could not get it to work. So I pulled it off the car just because we're in a time crunch. And so now we're going back to stage 1 and basically putting the nitro kit on there and running on the stock clutches, which is unfortunate because, you know, 3 months ago, I had a plan in place. I made an order for things to have this happen, which was our setup here. And this would have been, you know, our LNC controller that would have done the coil packs, and we were going to use mass airflow and auto air temperature manipulation to have a good, safe nitro setup and be able to run a good shot, and then also have protection of the clutches. But unfortunately, this is not worked out. The firmware is not available for that yet. So I've got the product, but it's basically essentially just a bunch of wires. I can't use it. So, so I'm kind of in a bind, unfortunately. That has not worked out. So now I'm having to resort back to kind of doing this on my own, which is usually how things go anyway. So I'm just going to put the kit on there, put it on a 100 shot. I'll show you how to do that today. This is going to be the wiring. Got a pretty good idea how I want to do it with the standalone. This is something anybody could do if they wanted to do it. And we're going to test it at the drag strip, see how it does. And I'm going to get some data logs to see, you know, is it safe on the car. So this will be the install part. It was going to be a lot cooler, a lot more trick, and be able to do a lot more things, but unfortunately that's just not panned out. You know, moving forward, I'll have to make some other plans. So anyways, all right, so stay tuned. All right, part 2. So I purchased a fuel pump wiring kit. This comes with an inline fuse, set relay. You just ground it. You run your power to the alternator, which will be back up here. And the relay and everything, I'm gonna set underneath the car. There's tons of room on these things when you got the panels off. Like, this is a whole area where if you have to do any wiring or like mount anything, there's lots and lots of room under here. And also there's quick access inside the car. I found it was the easiest place. Up here, there is a piece of tape that goes right in under your center console. This is near where your feet kind of sit right here. And there's a piece of tape right there that opens that up,
and then that has an area to go in and out of the car. So I've got tape around that to protect that. You need a grommet on it, but all the wires are gonna go in and out from there. And then this tunnel is like the perfect place for like mounting or hiding any sort of wiring, because it's all gonna be protected away from the weather. You got mounting points to wire tie things. So it's a good little spot. So that's where all this stuff's gonna go. So I'm gonna try to put my relay somewhere in here, kind of equidistant point to run to the standalone, and then also inside the car to the switch to activate the fuel system. So that's what we're gonna do now. Okay, so here's where we are. We got the tunnel off, made a backing plate. There's some mounting bolts along the side here. You can just run to mount something. So I've got like a makeshift bracket that's not tightened yet, but actually using some, this is just a little aluminum piece for heat shielding. So got both relays mounted, one for the standalone, one for the nitrous. I'm running the power, which is the main power, a lot thicker gauge. That's doubling up because it used a lot less for actual nitrous. These are going together, probably to like a 40 amp fuse. There you can see it down here. And I'm gonna run that along straight up to the alternator, which is actually pretty close. And it's probably gonna go straight up through here, right up on the back side of, or for actually the front side of the head, and follow the wiring harnesses up and over to the alternator. And that's gonna be where it's gonna get the power supply from. And then going into the car, I've already got those wires hooked up. I got some loom, and you can run straight in, which is really nice. And actually, you know what? I probably could have run straight in over here, because I think this goes straight on the console too. So it might have been a little closer. But anyways, all right, so I've already got over there, so it's not a big deal. But either way, you can get into the car very easily from under here. So I'm getting all the underneath wiring ready, and then we'll go into the car in the end, and then wire up the nitrous stuff through here. And I'll link on this video. You can see exactly how these relays work. They're pretty simple. They each are grounded together, or not grounded together, but they each have their own ground. And then you're gonna have basically a main power, an accessory power, and then that's gonna be the out. And that's about it, so. Okay, so got further down on the wiring. There's a nice ground point under here. Just scuffed it up really good. Got our inside wires, got our main stuff ready to run to the back. I do wanna show you, I really like these solder and seal connections. They only require like 140 degrees. You can do it with like a hot lighter. It's like a quick way to solder, and you can take basically, if I can get this up, zoom in on it. It's got a center solder piece, so you overlap the wires and then you just heat it, and then that melts onto and solders them together, and then you can put a shrink wrap over the top of that, which is really cool. And so it keeps it pretty good connection. It's all encased, sealed pretty well, and then you got your shrink wrap on top of it. So that's how I like to do my connections on these. That's a really nice little setup. And again, these are Sapobi, I guess. There's probably a bunch of different ones, but that's basically how they work. So that's what I like to use. So now we're gonna run this line, just gotta go all the way back to the noids. And then we run our power line, and then we gotta run our line that's gonna go to the independent fuel system. And then those things are gonna just ground, and that's it. So getting really close. The hardest part is just getting all this like set up and ready underneath here. That's been the hardest part. Everything else should be pretty easy peasy. Okay, for main power wire, I'm running it down through here. It's got a heat sink all the way around it. I bought from Amazon, just similar to what you have from the OEM. Running it up along the back side of the engine away from the pulleys, and you see I've got my amp fuse. And then right here's your alternator, and so you can just tap right in, and then you got power, main power. So that's my main power to all of it. It's all wired in through there. And if for some reason that loses power, it's gonna kill the power to both the standalone and to the actual nitrous. And so that's pretty easy peasy. You can just take the bolt off, and you're gonna slide that on, and then I've got power. I need to disconnect the battery first, and then I'll mount all that. But you see it's all right along there, looks OEM. So I recommend buying some of that stuff. It's really nice, and helps protect against heat and things like that. So we're back today. Only did a few hours yesterday. So we're gonna wire our actual solenoids and our purge. So you're gonna take one wire from each solenoid that's gonna go to ground, as well as a purge solenoid. And then your second wire, this one for the purge, is gonna go into the car to just a switch that's just gonna activate to turn on and off. The nitrous ones are gonna run through the relay. So you're gonna run two of these together to, I think it's the green wire. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's the green wire in that relay. And then I'll allow that to be activated via the switch. It's gonna be a monetary switch. And then we're gonna ground out our fuel pump and run our main fuel pump wire. So that's going to be kind of where we're at.
Okay, so there's a really good ground spot. Grounds your factory. I think maybe your ECM comes right off of here. So I've got my stuff grounded through there. Everything ran through. I'm going to cover this with heat shielding wiring. I'm just showing you real quick before I do that. And then coming down, I'll have this all covered with heat shielding wiring too. This is your solenoid, so they double on. Solenoids come together for a ground and together for activation switch. So now they've been joined here for the activation, and I'm going to run that. One of these wires is the a purge. So I got a purge, I've got a hot for the solenoids, and I've got the ground that runs the other way. So I've got to run those underneath, and I'm going to run that along the harness, and they'll have wire looms over them to protect them, and it'll be tied into everything. So that's kind of where we're at. So now we can move on to underneath and then go into the car and then finish it up. So as soon as I get underneath, get this stretched out, see exactly where the link's going to be, I'll put the wire looms on them. That should cover this all up with the heat shielding as well. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit, tie this all together so it looks nice and clean. But that's basically it. Pretty simple from this standpoint. Inside the car will be a little bit different. So, and then final will obviously be your main wire harness. Okay, so getting it a little bit situated. So we got our looms going in, got our relays that are mounted, took tension off to the top. I've got mounting points here because this is all going to set up here with the plate. Everything's got some wire looms running through. Protected, running up and over. We got our ground here, and now we are going to work on just kind of finishing where everything kind of runs, and then situating all this area and just putting looms and tightening and getting it all ready so it's out of, looks better and out of the way and protected. So alrighty, and that should be moving into the car. Okay. So wiring set up. We've got our exit. We got our shielding. Looks pretty good. Kind of goes along with OEM shielding. So, and then I gotta cut this wire tie here, but basically the inner liner is going to lay over at the top of that, and then this will all disappear. And then now we're going to the inside. So got all this set up. Okay, so I've got the wires coming in from the other side, and your best access is I've got to get underneath this console into here. And then probably gonna have to drill a hole to get into here. So there's a small hole here to run the wires through. And then behind your waterfall is your fuse box. There's one that's further up. I think it's in the passenger side floorboard, but that's further away. So this pops off. You can just pull it. I just popped it off there, and it's just got little clips. You gotta watch out for your speaker. I think there's some wires on it. So we're gonna pop this off. That'll give us access, and I think there's a bolt, and then this waterfall comes out, and you can access your screw. And then to get to the console, this panel down here I think comes loose, and I think it gives you access to the screws, and you can get. Okay, so you pull out from the top, and then you pull from the bottom, and this pops out. It takes a lot of force, a lot more than you think it will. And then there's this speaker connector. Looks like they just got a push tab, basically. Okay, so basically the push pin is right here. I thought it was back here, but once you unlock this, it's a little different. Most of them have the push pin right there. It's actually further out on this. And once you've done that, you got it out, and then you can pull the cover over your fuse box, and then you've got access to internal power on the car. Mine's a 1 LZ, so I'm not sure how many of these are powered. I actually may be able to use some of these fusible links. They look like they may have power to them, and then I'll probably tap one of those to get power, and then that's going to run down and get power, accessory power, basically to the inside. So I'm going to find a tap. Now the next thing is going to be getting inside our panel and putting in our nitrous panel. So I'm going to go try to take this to get access to our center. Pop, pop, pop. And it looks like there's a bunch of push pieces work our way up. And then that's all out. And then you've got exposure to underneath. I may not have to remove the whole console. I'm gonna see if I could just drill my hole and then run my wires through. I don't know yet. It may have to come off, so stay tuned. Let me look at it a little bit. But this is how you get to it on this side. I think the other side probably about the same way, but I don't need access over there. So the NX switch panel mounts like this. Sets in flush. So it gives you, it's got little mount
screws down here. So anything through here, it can put a hole. You gotta watch, there are wires on the bottom of this. You gotta watch where you're drilling. You can kind of see them. There are some wires down there, but once you've got a little hole, I can run everything down and along all the way back to my switch panel back here. And then from there, so everything should be able to run just nicely through here. And then just go to our switch panel. Only thing I'm using right now is gonna be nitrous. And then I'll actually change this. This is actually gonna be fuel system and purge. I always have my valve open, so I'm not gonna use that. So next thing we're gonna do is drill a hole for our wiring to come up and try to put like a grommet or something. So, all right. Okay, so these, right here, there's two 30 amp fuses. It's the third and fourth one down. And it's recoil packs, left and right. Those are your best ones to tap into, so that's where I've tapped in there. As far as ground, you have to take, you can make a chassis ground here. You have to take some sandpaper, which is what I've got underneath here, just clear the paint off. And then you can make a good ground contact. So that gives me 2 grounds and then 2 powers. And then running that along and then into for our setup. So then everything's gonna basically be punch wired in, and then your purge will just wire over, tap into the power that is getting from over here. So you could probably just do 1 power and then just wire it off inside instead of running 2 wires, but that's just the way I did it. So it is what it is. But okay, all right, stay tuned. We'll hopefully get this hooked up. Okay, so we got her wired. Just a couple little things I want to go over here. I was a little confused on the switch, but the odd looking in, it's got like a brown, that's your ground. And then your middle one's your, basically the accessory that you're trying to get the power to. And then your 12 volt that comes off the back firewall here, the fuse box, that's going to be the one on the far end. That's how these switches work. And they only work when the accessory is activated. I had that backwards earlier, so I had some issues, but this is kind of how it's wired up. Actually comes in there pretty well, and so now I'm going to tuck and hide this and get these wires out of the way. Because I'm doing like a makeshift system, I had to tee in once that's activated to a push button setup, and I'll push that up and get that flush. But basically, I'll activate like this on a monetary switch, and I can come on and off on the nitrous as I go down the track. So, all right, that's basically it. Now I got to put everything back together and get this going. All right, I got a switch. It's now hidden. Arm in arm, purge. Unfortunately, that's the way I got to run that. And then now we got everything wired up. I've got our main power line. Our solenoids all wired, somewhat clean, and then working on getting the trunk stuff done here. I'm just going to put some wire loom on that, and then this should be about ready to go. Put it back together. Okay, so we're ready to test. We're hooked up, powered up. I did run the purge. You can see I already just tested it up and around this loop right here, and I heat shrink wrapped my fuel line so it doesn't get too hot. But let's see if this comes out. I hope I got it angled right. So let's test it here. So there we go. There. Okay. All right, guys. So just did a test hit. I want to post that draggy video. So we were able to get a 60 to 130 just on a 100 shot of 6.7 seconds with the passenger. I had David in the car. And then just show you our final setup here. I've got my bottle heater on here that now hooks to my Makita batteries. We had decent pressure. I'll probably clean this up a little bit. So yes, and then we put our tires on, which are the 19s, but with the passenger, was it 6.7, right, David? 7. So I got a 6.7 just now. It's pretty good for just a 100 shot. So stay tuned. We're gonna have more passes and kind of those kind of things. So it's not bad. So still just kind of figuring it all out. About to pull a seat, get another basically 250 pounds off the car when you figure passenger plus seat. So I'll get some weights. All right, so now we're taking out seat for little weights. This is 2mm. Pop this off. You just take a screwdriver down in here, pop the cap, take the 2mm off, and that pulls it. It is going to throw a code when you do this. I'm not sure what the code looks like yet, but I know it throws one on the screen. And then these are 60mm in the front, and then you're going to move the seat forward and get to the ones in the back. And the whole seat comes out, and there's a harness underneath. The harness is supposed to be the hardest part, so I haven't done that yet, but we're about to. So if you want to move the seat, that's all right. So the trick is on this connector down here, basically there's a clip on this side. You got a release, and once you do that, there's a push button tab on the side, and then you can slide it out. So that's the hardest part, is just getting the push button, and then it locks off. And then you got your 4 bolts, and it should come off. And your seat's out. That's it. Easy peasy. All right, so the seat top comes off is the easiest way. There's probably a way to do it without doing that. And then we're gonna weigh this sucker. Oh God. Shit. This thing is heavy.
It looks it.
All right. Thanks. All right, we're gonna see the weight. This is the GT1 seat. Base right at 56 pounds. It's just rocking, so it's gonna go back and forth, but somewhere around 56 pounds. Between 54 and 56. All right, so if you wanna be psycho like I am, weight reduction, pull your interior panels off. We're gonna pull the fluid out of our washer. We're gonna measure that, see how much that weighs. Our connector here, these just all pop off. They're pretty easy. So this one slides in, you just push the pin here. This one, you have a little lock, you just push on the side, that one pops off. And then the third one, you pull a safety lock off the top and push down, and this all pops off. So then you got access, and you can pull this out. We're gonna weigh this and see how much this carpet weighs. But I suspect it's like probably 4 or 5 pounds, if I had to guess, maybe 3. Okay, we just used basically pressure filling of our bottles. So these were in the refrigerator, took those out and hooked them up. Got them within 1 pound of their max, which is pretty good. So I've got 20 pounds of nitrous for tomorrow. Got my scale zeroed. We are going to hook up and see what this carpet and all the little connectors weigh. So it weighs 4 pounds. So there's another 4 pounds off the car, and then we're about to get the washer fluid, which I suspect is like another 5, 6, 7 pounds. We're gonna try something a little unorthodox. I have my scale zeroed. I've got a bucket. I've got one of my little pumps that pumps fluid. It's too big to fit into the water reservoir, so I'm gonna try to pump out all my fluid that I have for the windshield washer cleaner and see if this will work and how much it weighs. So let's try it. All right, so at the track, we're trying to see what we can get. First pass, 6.7. I had 4x60 1.7. Having some issues with my tires. I've got a little slit on the inside. It's causing air loss. So I'm having to air up in between runs, but haven't done any nitrous passes yet, but that's gonna be coming in soon. So right now we're gonna race DBM. If you wanna look at some of the cars, lots of cool stuff here. It's a supercharged Eray. We got this really cool green wrap. We got red mist, and then we got a bunch of guys from Injected Engineering. So I'll probably actually take my Tesla down too and make it past it and see kind of what it runs. So, all right, stay tuned.
678 at 108. .684 at 107.
so that's the end. So didn't get the times I wanted. I was hoping for 6.3, 6.4. The track prep just wasn't happening with the tires I had. So I'm ordering some sticky Mickeys and 325 to see if I can fit them on this 13-inch rim and then go back and test some more. Did get some at least good mile an hour data, kind of know where we're at with the power wise. I think the highest was like 112 and a half in the 8th, which is pretty decent for what little bit I was able to hit it in between shifts. So that's kind of what we're gonna do moving forward. I do want to do a huge shout out to Supercharged Eray that was there, you know, Steven. We got El Jefe, who I'll have to tag on here. Another nice guy that I met, had a beautiful green PPF wrapped Z06. C8 Nate, obviously DBM Christian was there, and Korey from Paragon, like a friend of mine Seth came, and a friend of mine Wayne, all with Z06s. So it was just a good time. We all had a blast. It was just good people, good company. So stay tuned. Next video is going to be getting these headers on. It's probably going to be in a few weeks. I've got them, they're done. And then we're going to play a little bit more with this nitrous, try to get it tuned out. But I've got to say this, anybody who's modifying these, you probably already know this, but I'm just going to reaffirm it. If you think you're going to beat this transmission, you're probably not. It's definitely going to take some probably mechanical hardware stuff to do it. That's my opinion. I don't think just clutch controller and stuff, like the amount of slip that I was having, that's not going to be fixed, I don't think, with 15% clamping force. So I'm going to talk about doing maybe a Dodson clutch setup. I think mechanically I'm going to have to make some changes in order for this to work, or at least take the power away in between shifts, like, you know, very early. So anyway, stay tuned. If you like what you see, like and subscribe, please. And I will see you guys next time.